Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Permian-Triassic Boundary. What 6 million years of recovery looks like. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. 251 million years ago, something killed 96% of all marine species and 70% of all land vertebrates on Earth. It was not an asteroid. It was the Siberian Traps, a volcanic province that erupted for approximately 1 million years, releasing carbon dioxide and methane on a scale that collapsed ocean chemistry, stripped oxygen from the seas, and drove global temperatures 8 to 10 degrees Celsius above already warm baselines. Life came closer to total extinction than at any other point in the half-billion-year history of complex animals. The Great Dying left a world almost unrecognizable. For the first time in millions of years, there was essentially no coal. Land plants were virtually wiped out. The coal gap in the geological record documents 10 million years of near-absent vegetation. The oceans turned anoxic for 5 million years. When vertebrates re-emerged on land, a single species of pig-sized therapsid named Lystrosaurus made up 90 to 95% of all land vertebrates alive, a biological monoculture with no equivalent before or since. For decades, geologists believed recovery took 5 to 10 million years. We now know it took 30 million years to fully restore the ecological complexity that existed before the extinction. What does the worst catastrophe in the history of complex life on Earth tell us about recovery and about the fragility of the ecosystems we depend on today? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the expanding frontier of unexplained cosmic phenomena, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Space exploration has produced many surprises, but perhaps none as persistent as the anomalies that professional scientists describe and then struggle to explain. These are not the claims of amateur enthusiasts or fringe theorists. They are the published findings of researchers at NASA, the European Space Agency, and major research universities, documented in peer-reviewed journals and presented at professional conferences, then quietly filed under requires further investigation while the scientific mainstream moves on to the next mission. The anomalies take different forms: unexpected geological features on planetary surfaces that do not match known formation processes, electromagnetic signals that arrive from directions where no known source exists, orbital mechanics of small bodies that deviate from the predictions of established gravitational models in ways that suggest an additional, undetected force. Each individual anomaly might be dismissed as an instrument artifact or a modeling error. But when anomalies accumulate across multiple missions, multiple instruments, and multiple research teams, the collective weight becomes harder to discount. Science advances precisely by taking anomalies seriously, by treating the things that do not fit the mode as invitations to improve the model rather than as embarrassments to be minimized. The history of physics is largely a history of anomalies. The precession of Mercury that Newtonian gravity could not explain, the cosmic expansion that Einstein refused to accept, the dark matter that bends light with no visible source. Each one, properly investigated, expanded the boundaries of what we understand. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Permian-Triassic Boundary, what 6 million years of recovery looks like, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Permian-Triassic Boundary, dated to 251, 9 million years ago, marks the most severe mass extinction in the history of complex animal life. Approximately 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species were eliminated. The event is attributed primarily to the eruption of the Siberian Traps large igneous province over approximately 1 million years, which released sufficient carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide to drive ocean acidification, anoxia, and global temperatures 8-10 degrees C above pre-extinction baselines. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the coal gap, the near-total absence of economically significant coal deposits in geological strata spanning approximately 10 million years after the extinction boundary, documents the virtual collapse of terrestrial plant life. Coal forms from the accumulated organic matter of dense forest ecosystems. Its absence from early Triassic strata reflects the fact that land-plant communities sufficient to produce coal did not exist on Earth for millions of years after the extinction. Land ecosystems were reduced to disaster taxa, fungi, and sparse colonizers. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Lystrosaurus, a pig-sized dissonodont therapsid, a mammal-like reptile, made up approximately 95% of all identified land vertebrate individuals in early Triassic fossil beds, a biological monoculture unprecedented in the fossil record before or since. Multiple species of Lystrosaurus spread across Gondwana and Laurasia. Its dominance reflects not inherent superiority, but the collapse of every other ecological niche into vacancy. Lystrosaurus was simply the therapsid lineage that happened to survive the disaster. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, marine recovery from the Permian-Triassic extinction was prolonged and uneven. Reef ecosystems, built in the Permian by rugose corals and stromatoporoids, were entirely destroyed. Those organisms went extinct at the boundary. New reef-building communities based on different organisms did not establish themselves until approximately 10 million years after the extinction event. Ocean anoxia, the persistent absence of dissolved oxygen in deep and mid-ocean waters, is documented in black shale and pyrite-bearing sediments for up to 5 million years above the extinction horizon. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Karoo Basin of South Africa preserves the most complete terrestrial stratigraphic record spanning the Permian-Triassic Boundary and the subsequent recovery interval. Continuous geological sections expose the extinction horizon, the overlying Lystrosaurus monoculture zone, and the gradual diversification of the Triassic fauna above it. The Karoo is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and the primary field laboratory for studying how terrestrial ecosystems responded to and recovered from the Great Dying. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: a fungal spike, an abrupt increase in fungal spore abundance, occurs immediately at the Permian-Triassic boundary in many sections worldwide. It reflects the mass death of plants and animals on land, producing a nutrient pulse that briefly supported vast decomposer communities before being exhausted. The fungal spike is a consistent biostratigraphic marker for the extinction horizon and documents the brief ecological takeover by decomposers in the immediate aftermath of the catastrophe. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Permian-Triassic boundary. What 6 million years of recovery looks like. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that stepwise recovery model, life recovered in successive pulses as different environmental stressors abated sequentially at different rates. Ocean anoxia easing first, then temperature normalizing, then ocean pH recovering, then terrestrial ecosystems rebuilding over millions of years. Under this model, the 30-million-year recovery is not a single prolonged crisis, but a series of partial recoveries interrupted by new stressors. The main supporting evidence is that different taxonomic groups show recovery at substantially different times, consistent with their differing environmental sensitivities. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the dead clades walking phenomenon, lineages that survived the extinction event and persisted into the early Triassic, but then went extinct without diversifying, described by Michael Benton and colleagues. These were evolutionary dead ends, groups that endured the catastrophe but could not establish viable populations in the restructured post-extinction ecosystem. Their presence distorts apparent taxonomic diversity in the early Triassic, making recovery appear faster than it actually was when ecological function rather than species count is measured. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the 30-million-year full recovery timescale, documented by studies showing that ecological complexity, food web depth, and functional diversity did not return to pre-extinction levels until well into the Middle and Late Triassic, is now the consensus estimate, substantially revising earlier shorter estimates. The main objection to the long recovery model is that different metrics of recovery, species count versus functional diversity versus ecosystem engineering, yield different timescales, and the definition of full recovery is itself a matter of ongoing scientific debate. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Permian-Triassic Boundary, what 6 million years of recovery looks like, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes stratigraphic sections from the Karoo Basin show a clear three-part sequence, a diverse Permian fauna below the extinction horizon, a Lystrosaurus-dominated monoculture immediately above it, and a gradual diversification of Triassic archosaurs and cynodonts in successively higher strata. Oxygen isotope data from Karoo fossils records the thermal maximum temperatures 8-10 degrees C above background that persisted for millions of years above the extinction boundary, directly suppressing recovery. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented marine sediment records from multiple ocean basins, document anoxia markers, black shales, pyrite framboids, and geochemical indicators of oxygen-depleted water, persisting for up to 5 million years above the extinction horizon. Reef absence is documented globally. The first post-extinction reefs, based on microbial mounds and early sponge communities, appeared approximately 10 million years after the boundary. These independent marine records from multiple continents converge on the same prolonged recovery timeline. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the fungal spike at the extinction boundary, documented in sections from Europe, Asia, and North America, provides independent confirmation of catastrophic land-plant collapse. Carbon isotope excursions at the boundary, large negative shifts in the ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12, record the injection of isotopically light carbon from the Siberian Traps volcanism and from the destabilization of seafloor methane hydrates. These geochemical signals are globally consistent and constrain the extinction mechanism as carbon cycle disruption driven by volcanic degassing. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Permian-Triassic Boundary, what 6 million years of recovery looks like. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Permian-Triassic recovery is now understood to have taken approximately 30 million years to restore full ecological complexity, substantially longer than previously estimated. 2022 research showed recovery was geographically uneven, with different ocean basins recovering at different rates depending on local oceanographic conditions. The Karoo Basin remains the primary terrestrial field site. The German Archaeological Institute and multiple university teams conduct ongoing fieldwork there. Climate modelers use the PT boundary carbon cycle perturbation as a deep time analog for rapid anthropogenic carbon release, noting that the Siberian Traps emitted carbon over approximately 1 million years, while current industrial emissions are releasing comparable quantities orders of magnitude faster. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Permian-Triassic Boundary. What 6 million years of recovery looks like from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Permian-Triassic extinction ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.